Hi, I'm Ravi Best, and you're listening to The Other Side of the Bell.
Hello, and welcome to The Other Side of the Bell, a podcast dedicated to everything trumpet, brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass. We'll help you take your trumpet playing to the next level. I'm John Snell, trumpet specialist here at Bob Reeves Brass, and I'll be your host for this episode. Joining me today is trumpeter Ravi Best. I'm thrilled to have Ravi Best in the studio with me today. Ravi is a versatile trumpet player based out of New York City. His musical journey started in Los Angeles, where he played with the Velvet Knights Drum and Bugle Corps before attending Howard University and New York University. While he was in school, he played at the Kennedy Center and recorded with John Faddis before going on tour with famed saxophonist Illinois Jacquet. Ravi has performed with some of the top names in the world, including Aretha Franklin, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Whitney Houston, and you might see him on TV playing in the Saturday Night Live band, which he's appeared numerous times. And besides all the live dates and recording sessions that Ravi does, you can also catch him on Broadway, having played in shows like The Color Purple, 42nd Street, and Chicago. We'll get to Ravi's interview here in a moment after a word from our sponsor and some trumpet news. Today's episode is brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass, who share your passion for creating extraordinary music. You know that feeling when your instrument just clicks and the music flows effortlessly? That's what Bob Reeves Brass has been helping customers do since 1968. We've helped brass musicians like you achieve their dreams by ensuring their equipment is always in perfect harmony. We know you want to immerse yourself in the art of music making, and we're here to remove any barriers between you and your creative vision. Bob Reeves Brass is truly your one-stop shop for everything you need to fuel your passion and create music that touches hearts and souls. So go ahead, let us help you elevate your sound to new heights. Don't wait another moment to elevate your musical journey with Bob Reeves Brass. Connect with us at bobreeves.com, shoot us an email at info@bobreeves.com, and keep up with the latest news on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Bob Reeves Brass. Embrace your passion for music and let Bob Reeves Brass be your partner in creating the extraordinary. Summer is definitely here in sunny Southern California. I'm sweating a little bit here in the front room. But what a whirlwind 2024 has been so far in this first half of the year. I want to give a shout out to a few special people because we've been doing so many events this last couple months. First of all, Peter, who hunted me down at the Hyatt Regency lobby at ITG. He's just found the podcast and he was making his way through the episodes. I think he was in the 50s back in late May, early June. So we'll see where he's at now. He's got quite a backlog to get through. And also Dr. Keith Carnes, who chatted with me at the recent Bill Adam Trumpet Festival up in Central Washington University. Dr. Carnes is a professor up there, and he uses this podcast in his curriculum for his different courses and with his trumpet students. So very honored. Thank you, Keith, for that. And it was great hanging with you up in Ellensburg, Washington. So, a quick wrap up of what we've been doing. The Adam Fest was an amazing experience. I think I did 32 alignments up there, even though there was only, I think, 70 to 100 attendees, but it's a great crowd up there. Jerry Hay did a presentation with his charts, with some of his horn section charts. Larry Hall did a presentation. Charlie Davis did a presentation on lead playing, among many others. It was really a wonderful time, and being in the vendor room was great because everyone filtered through and hung out and chatted with me while we were working. Also, ITG was a huge success for us. We did a record number of valve alignments, and a lot of mouthpieces found a new home, as well as a lot of new instruments. This was our first ITG representing Shires, and a lot of Shires trumpets from their Q series, E flat and C trumpets, to their custom series found new homes at ITG. As you can see behind me, yes, we finally got our shipment of guard bags. So if you are in the market for a new trumpet case or trombone case, if you double or have friends that play the trombone, we have a great selection of single, double, triple, and the quad wheelie trumpet cases in both nylon and leather. and various colors and designs. And in the trombone, same thing. We have nylon and leather, both the Elite and the regular series for trombone and bass trombone. So all of those are available on our website at trumpetmouthpiece.com. Coming up in August, I will be heading over to Japan, our annual visit to our good buddies Joy Brass in Tokyo. And this year, they have me on quite the tour. I'll be doing 5 different cities. I start off in Osaka, visiting Mikigaki, Wind Forest in Osaka, then Bardon Gaki in Nagoya. And then I head up north, and I'll go to Music Verse in Iwate Prefecture and Noah Music in Fukushima. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the Shinkansen. And I should mention, I will be spending some time at Joy Brass in Tokyo, and culminating the trip will be an exhibition at the International Women's Brass Conference. So very excited to support that organization, and this will be our first time exhibiting at that wonderful conference. That one will be in Mito City, Japan. So if you're somewhere over the Pacific in Asia and you want to come visit, all of the details for our tour will be at bobreeves.com/Japan. And as always, we'll have the link to get you there in the description of this podcast or video, depending on how you're viewing or listening to this. Now, without further ado, here's my interview with Ravi Best. All right, we are here today with trumpet player Ravi Best on scene at ITG 2024 in Anaheim, California. So the other side of the bell on location.
Man, this is great.
So excited to have you here, Ravi. And especially you're in and out in one day at the Greg Black booth. And so thanks for taking some time away from them and hanging out with us here.
My pleasure.
On the dark side.
My pleasure, yes.
So let's start at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
How did you find the trumpet, or did the trumpet find you?
Wow. Okay. So the trumpet found me. So let me say, first of all, neither of my parents are musicians, but my parents grew up in Jersey City, which is right outside of New York City, literally the train path right out. And them growing up in the 50s, my father, I grew up him telling me all these stories of, he's a huge jazz fan, and to this day has a massive vinyl recording that I never want to inherit. But of course, all these original pressings of all these Art Blakey and recordings and Miles and Coltrane recordings. So my father always says, he's not a musician. He always says, I play the heck out of the stereo. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in a home. I mean, I can't remember a time where I wasn't listening to Clifford Brown. I mean, any memory, I can't remember being in my home without Clifford Brown and Lee Morgan and Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and Coltrane, all this, Art Blakey, just my
just
whole
surrounded by music,
surrounded by that. So I think, and at the same time, my folks also love classical music. Mm-hmm. Every Easter and Christmas, my mother is playing Handel's Messiah, and I had a wonderful experience with her a few years ago when the three tenors when Pavarotti was still alive. Mm-hmm. And I think, I won't say how young I was at that time, but, and watching the three tenors concert and my mother singing all of these arias.
She knew them.
She knew them. She didn't know the Italian, but all of the melodies. I remember sitting with her thinking, oh my God, Mom, how do you know all of these melodies? And she said, look, your grandmother used to play all these recordings when I grew up. So I grew up in a home where all this great jazz music and great classical music, as well as R&B and everything from Stevie Wonder to Shaka Khan to everything to the Commodores, all that 70s R&B. And I grew up here, out here in Southern California. Uh-huh. So I grew up.
You were out here?
I grew up. So my family, we moved to California. My father worked for Amtrak doing computers and things for them. And so we moved around quite a bit. He was setting up networks, computer networks and things. So we were here in Southern California and Northern California. But primarily, I was here in Southern California from the time I was in the 5th grade until I graduated high school. So here in Southern California, of course, all my friends are listening to Van Halen and Ozzy Osbourne and AC/DC. So I grew up, which I'm really grateful that I grew up with this very diverse background of just musical experience. I saw Van Halen in concert when,
Which tour?
Okay.
Do you remember? To put you on the spot.
I'm going to age myself.
We have a lot of Van Halen fans on the other side of the bell.
I mean, I saw 1984 with David Lee Roth. David Lee
man.
Roth, man. And it was great. I'll say one of my great experiences I had a few years ago when I was touring with Kool and the Gang. We did a show out here in LA, and one of the singers, we're coming off the gig, I'm getting out of my costume, and one of the singers says, "Hey man, Alex is backstage. He wants to say hi." I was like, "Alex who?" He says, "Alex Van Halen." I said, "What? Alex Van Halen?" I said, "Man, no. You have to introduce me right now. We have to go. So, he took, because before I joined the band, now Kool and the Gang opened for Van Halen on a tour they did in 2012. They were the opening band because David Lee Roth had seen the band perform somewhere, and he said, "I want you all to be the opening band for our next tour." So they opened for Van Halen. So I got to see. I know,
awesome.
I
Talk
know.
about coming around full circle.
I
right?
know, incredible. And so meeting Alex was amazing for me, and I told him, I said, "Man, I'll never forget when I saw you guys, and the sound of your toms and your drums was unlike anything." And he was very nice. He really warm.
That's so cool.
and
But he
really
wanted to meet you.
wonderful.
That's
I mean, that was right. I was like, "Oh my God, amazing." So
love it.
all that to say, having grown up in Southern California, in this area, I mean, I feel like I had the best of kind of both worlds. My parents being from the East Coast, and my father sharing all these stories of when he was growing up, and going to Birdland and the clubs in New York. All these stories about, he would say, "Man, when we were coming up, we could go to Birdland. You would pay $1 to go in, and you could spend 50 cents for a beer." And he said you would stand in the back at what was called the peanut gallery. And he said you could sit there for $1.50, 3 sets. He said, the first set would be Horace Silver's group. And you would see, Horace Silver with Booker, and all this Junior Cook and all that, Horace Silver. And then the next set would be Blakey and the Messengers, with Lee Morgan and Freddie Hubbard or Wayne. You would see that. And then the last set could be, Coltrane's quartet. So you could hear all that music in one night for $1.50, And then he said, "Oh yeah." Then we used to go to the Cafe Bohemia because Monk was doing a 6-month residency at the Cafe Bohemia. So we would just go see Monk all the time.
Wow.
So it's so funny. My father, I just had lunch with him and his 3 best friends recently, and they're all in their 80s now. And it's so great to hear these old men talk about their jazz club experiences. And my father's like, "Yeah, man, do you remember we went and saw Cannonball one time at I forget which club, but he said I went to the bathroom, and he said I came back, and Louis Hayes was sitting at the bar next to my wife. He was sitting drinking my drink." I was like, "Oh man, Louis Hayes is trying to pick up on my mom drink," So it's great. So all that to say, I grew up hearing all of these stories and around all of this music. So music being in my home how it was, I think I was just so affected by that. So honestly, my first instrument was not trumpet. I was seven.
Really? Wow.
I thought, I'm going to play the guitar. Let me try the guitar. And I did that for a few months. Didn't work. I was just too young and maybe not the right teacher at that time. So a couple of years go by. I was in the 4th grade. At that time, and I was singing in the choir. Once again, music. And I thought, I'll try alto this time. I tried alto for a few months. Didn't quite stick. 2 more years go by. I'm 11 or 12 now. Now I have a cousin who is similar age to me. We were very close. He came to stay with my family for the summer. He was playing the trumpet. And I thought, that's cool, the trumpet. Let me check that out. Let me pick it up. And right away, I was able to get a decent sound. And I think just because, as we know, just hearing the mirror, I studied with Bill. I always think of Bill Fielder in this way. Prof used to say the trumpet is the mirror of the mind. And I think that sound of the trumpet of Clifford, all that was so ingrained in me that picking up the trumpet and getting an embouchure and blowing the air, I was able to get a sound. So my parents said, "Oh, good. Well, let's get you some lessons, at a local community store out here. What the town was called Altaloma. The store was Altaloma Music. My first teacher, I have to give him great credit was a guy named Pete Gamber, who owned the store, and he was and I came in the store, and right away he said, "Oh, what do you do? What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to play trumpet." I said, "I want to play like Clifford Brown," and he was like, "What?" He said, he took me. He said, "Come here, come open the door." Some other teacher was in the room. He said, "Tell him what you just said." I said, "Man, I want to learn how to play like Clifford Brown." They were like, "Who is this kid?" Because everybody was into Maynard, and he was my first teacher, huge Maynard fan, huge Maynard fan. It had me in a jet tone at 13 years old.
We all have a phase.
We all, of course, we all went through
I have some stuff to show you after we're done here. Speaking of which, we'll talk about that later. But anyway, so
that's how I started.
And you said you're 11?
And I was 11. Wow. And my father said, "Okay, man, look, we've done this music thing. 3 strikes, you're out." He said, "I'll support anything else, but we've done this music." But I loved the trumpet, and no one had to tell me to practice. I thought it was just so much fun. I mean, literally the things I tell my students, whenever I'm teaching, especially when they're beginners, I'm like, just have fun making sound. Music should be fun. The trumpet should be fun for you. There's a time for practice and being serious, and you need to do that. But when you're done with that, just have fun making sound and just really creating with this thing and seeing how it can be fun for you. So it was really fun for me, and I loved it. And no one had to tell me to practice.
Amazing. So you're playing in the school bands, you're taking lessons. At what point did it just naturally be a thing where you're like, I want to do this for the rest of my life?
Okay. I'm very clear. So a couple of things. Winton, oh man, I'm really going to date myself. And I try not to do that because in our industry, youth is such a thing.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, since we're doing this.
It's only on the internet. It's fine.
No
one will listen.
Yeah. So I remember when Winton was playing, I was a kid. And I remember when Winton was playing with Art Blakey. And once again, I remember the night my father came home, he said, "You got to listen to this record. Listen to this trumpet player. There's this new young trumpet player everyone is talking about." And it was this Art Blakey record. I'll never forget it. And Winton playing, everybody knows this recording because it's legendary now. Winton playing the theme and playing these double tonguing these arpeggios up an octave. He was doing all this double tonguing up the octave, and my father was like, "Listen to this," and he said, and then shortly after that, went and got released his first record on Columbia, and my father said, "You need to write a letter to this guy. You need to try to reach out to him. You want to be a professional musician. We need to try to see if we can contact him." And so I wrote, he had me sit down. We wrote a letter. I asked him these questions like, what kind of mouthpiece do you play on? What do you think about, I'm playing on a jet tone. What do you think about that? What should I practice? I listen to Clifford Brown. I'm trying to learn Clifford Brown solos. What should I do? A bunch of questions. And my father, we sent it to CBS Records in New York. Didn't hear anything for a few months. My old man, I love my father so much, man. My old man called CBS. He got on the phone. He got the number in New York, got the jazz division, and called him. "Look, my son is trying to reach out to this trumpet player. We sent a letter. We haven't heard anything, blah, blah, blah." They said, "Oh, okay. Well, here, let me give you his manager's address. You should send it to his management." We sent this letter to the management. A month or so later, Winton wrote me back. And I got this letter from him answering the questions, saying, at that time, my parents, I have that letter framed, of course. And he said, learn like the solo to Miles Davis, Freddie Freeloader, it was basic things, not that solo is basic.
Yeah.
That solo is genius, as we know. We can all, as trumpet players, sing that solo. But he gave some recommendations, said, well, jet tone is not the best. I would advise you get on a 7C and start,
I love it.
some things. And he said, and next time I'm in town, come see me, come to my show. So the next time Wynton was here in California, he did a show at Cal State Northridge. I went to the show, I took the letter, and I said, and I said, look, Wynton told me to come back. The security said, okay, we'll let you in. And I went backstage and I said, oh, Mr. Marcellus, I wrote you this letter. He was like, oh, this is my man. Come on in, man. Come in. Da, 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 da. Brought me in. He was like, here, let me hear you play something. And I played a little something. He said, okay, cool. He said, all right, there's some amateur things you need to work on. And he said, do you have the Schlossberg? And I was like, no. He said, okay, you need to get the Schlossberg. And you told me the books I need to practice. And he said, look, man, you can do this. He said, you just have to shed. Just hit the shed. He said, you can do this. You can be out here, and really, as a young trumpet player, I was very young, made me feel like, oh, okay, when your hero, the person, granted, like I said, I grew up listening to Clifford Brown and Lee Morgan, but as we know, those heroes are in the past.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, but to have someone that you look up to alive in front of you saying you can do this and giving me a push and some support and instruction meant the world. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And then I'll say the following summer, after that, my parents were smart enough. I had an opportunity to do one of these tours with a bunch of high school kids going around Europe, playing music like a concert band.
Oh, wow.
So my first summer on the road, and this is what really instilled me wanting to be a musician. My first summer on the road, I was 16 years old, and I will tell my age of that. And I was in DCI. I did drum corps. There was a drum corps out here called the Velvet Knights.
Yeah, you marched VK?
Yeah, man.
Oh my gosh.
I marched VK.
Yeah.
So, which was amazing. So that summer, that year, I was marching VK. So that summer, I left home after school, went out with VK, was out for a month or whatever, and then left the tour. Now, I did one of these tours where a bunch of high school kids playing a concert band. You go to Europe, and you do 2 weeks touring around Europe, doing concerts and things in Europe. And so I went to Europe for the first time, playing these concerts. But all while I was doing a bunch of concert band stuff, of course, I was shedding on Clifford Brown, playing Clifford Brown solos, and Lee Morgan, and Wynton, Wynton's stuff, and playing that, and saw whenever I would play some jazz thing, people were always just lighting up. Oh man, I love this. I love jazz. These Europeans, I couldn't speak any French or Italian, but jazz was the language that connected us, and I saw that. And then I left that and went right back with VK and finished the summer. We went to finals. We marched in finals. And after that summer, man, that was it. I knew what it was like to be on the road. I knew what it was like to travel and to perform for people and just see how much joy they had in listening to this, whatever the music I was and playing or performing. And I knew that's it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So my friends at home, I had a bunch of friends who they were, like I said, kind of listening to Van Halen and Ozzy and all this kind of stuff. I just said, hey man, I'm sorry, I can't hang. I love that. That's fun. But this is what I need to do. And I was just like, I have to be in the shed and I have to try to develop and do this because this is what I want to do.
Wow. So it was during high school time.
Yes.
School's age. Wow. So what did shedding look like then? Like, were you just get home from school and then doing a routine, doing Schlossbergs, doing Arbenz?
Honestly, at that time, like I said, because my first teacher was really into Maynard, and his teacher had studied with Claude Gordon. I'm trying to remember this guy's name. He lived out here. He was a studio musician who was out here. So my teacher, initially, honestly, I mean, I was doing Schlossberg because Wynton was talking about that. And I think my first teacher, him being a Maynard head and being into that, was kind of like, I hate to say this, but kind of the anti-Arbans. He was like a rebel kind of guy. Like, no, I'm not going to do the Arbans. That's all legit classical. We're going to play double G's and we're going to get our air. And he was really big into air and developing your sound and range. So I was into these, which I still love, the Claude Gordon book to this day. Claude Gordon, I would do that, and Schlossberg. And I think I did some Arbans for, tonguing in some basic things. And then after that, I was trying to shed on this Lee Morgan,
So you're doing transcriptions and playing along?
Oh, man, my father, we had a reel-to-reel player in the house, and my father would make me these record. I said, Dad, please, can you record the Clifford Brown or this Lee Morgan record or Art Blakey and Jazz Masters and this Clifford Brown? I want this solo. I'm trying to learn Clifford solo on Dahoud or Jordu, and he would record that. And then with the reel-to-reel, then you could slow it down to half the speed. So then I would learn the solos. It would be half the speed, down the octave. And I was just like, I'm trying to learn these solos and trying to get a grasp of this music, and this language, just because it's all, as we know, it's all in the recordings.
Yeah. So,
and that was really my focus when I was young, trying to get that together.
Man. And so when it came to going to school after high school, did you decide to do a music degree, or what did you do? You just start playing?
Yeah. So no, I did. So initially, of course, everyone thinks I was like, I got to go to Berkeley. Everybody goes to Berkeley. And my parents said, you know what? We want you to take a look at Howard University. And I thought, oh, okay. And I think honestly, no, I can tell you the truth. After growing up in Southern California, as a young African-American man, I think my parents are like, okay, we've had enough of Van Halen and we've had enough Ozzy Osbourne. No, we've had enough of that. Let's go take a look at Howard. A little culture for you, son. And I walked on the campus and I was like, wow, look at this campus of young African-Americans and everyone but I, of course, I was still like, man, but I'm going to Berkeley. I'm trying to be with the cats. I walked on that campus. I didn't even have a trumpet. I just had my mouthpiece in my pocket. So the trumpet instructor and the big band director at Howard University is a gentleman named Fred Herbie, who is a monster, brilliant trumpet player. Fred was the principal trumpet player in the Kennedy Center Orchestra for 50 years. So did all the things that came there in the Opera House there at the Kennedy Center, all the shows there. Incredible piccolo trumpet player. I mean, oh man, because Maurice Andre was his hero. And led the big band there for. He's still there. Yeah. He's still there. He's got one more year. He was going to retire, but now I'm here. They're asking him, like, come on, just give us one more year. One more year.
I love it.
So I walk in there with just a mouthpiece and taking a tour. And ironically enough, as soon as I walked into the band room, one of the other teachers, this professor who used to be there, named Penn, looked at me. As soon as I walked in the door, he said, "Hey, you were in VK." I was like, yeah, how do you know that? He said, well, yeah, I recognize you. So I was like, oh my God, I'm walking into this classroom in this college out of nowhere. I've never been to Washington, D.C. in my life. And this man recognized me as soon as I walked in the room, which was striking. So I go in, I meet with Fred Herbie. I said, look, I'm taking a tour. Oh, great. He says, well, you have your horn. I said, oh, I just have my mouthpiece. I didn't know I was going to be playing for someone. He said, okay, well, here's my horn. He said, let me hear you play, had me read some big band charts. He said, well, have you been working on any literature? I said, yeah. I said, I've played the Haydn. I've played the Hummel. Because even though my teacher, like I said, being a Maynard head, Wynton's classical records were out. And of course, I worshiped Wynton. Oh man, I worship Wynton was a god. So of course, yes, the Hummel. I played that in the Haydn. So I played some of the first movement the Hummel. I think maybe some of the third movement, some of the I think the second movement of the Haydn, because lyrical and really pretty. Ba-da-dee. So I played some of that, and I think played on the blues, played a little bit of whatever, and he said, great. He said, you know what? If I can get you admitted into school today, I'm prepared to give you a full scholarship. And if you decide to come here, our big band is doing a State Department of Beijing in the fall, and you'll be able to go to Beijing.
Well,
yes. So I just said, great. Let's go to the administration building. I had taken the SATs. He said, yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah, that's okay. You don't have to take them again. And got me admitted into school right then and there. So I was like, wow, great. My parents were ecstatic. And I was like, great. I was like, great. This seems cool. I'm not going to be have a bunch of debt that we all do. And I just got a full ride, and I'll be in DC, and I know that this is a performance center here on the East Coast, which I eventually want to be in New York. This can be my step to getting there.
Man, well, that's amazing. It's like it came to you.
It was incredible. It was just how that happened.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
So did you study with Fred while you were there?
So I did. Fred is once again amazing trumpet player. Amazing. Studying with him and playing through the literature. Being introduced to the E-flat trumpet, being introduced to the piccolo, and C trumpet, and playing all the literature and things, and also playing in his band. It seems like throughout my life, as much as I wanted to be Clifford Brown, I wanted to be Clifford Brown and Lee Morgan and Wynton. I wanted to be that. And the great thing about DC is, right, Blues Alley's there. So my first semester there, Terrence Blanchard came through, and so I got to meet Terrence, and that's where I first met Freddie Hubbard. All these people coming through, and Wallace. Wallace was playing with Tony Williams. At that time, God bless him.
Yeah.
So playing in the big. So this has happened to me a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. I'm in the band. I'm playing second trumpet in my first semester there. And then the guy who was the lead player in the band dropped out of school, and Fred said, look, I want you to move up and play lead. Okay, I'll play lead. Once again, like I said, my first teacher, Pete, was a great Maynard fan, so I had developed range. So he was like, great. Yeah, you're the new lead player. Perfect. So I ended up being the lead player throughout my whole college career there. And Fred being at the Kennedy Center, he got me on my first show at the Kennedy Center in my I guess my senior year of school. He said, look, man, I'm doing a 5-week show. I want you to get this experience, and brought me into a show at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah. So was that your first professional experience? Or did you do any freelancing or anything?
I'm trying to think. I know I did in DC at that time, but it was smaller, jazz gigs and around town, private events, and playing in some clubs a little bit. But I guess I would say that was probably, my first, well, I want to say that's my first professional, but when I was in high school, back in California, here, there's a college here called Chaffey College. And this guy, Jack Mason, used to run a big band there for many years. And so when I was in my last year of high school, I played in that college big band, and they did a tour of Europe. So that was my second tour of Europe. When I was 18, we went to Europe and did a bunch of concerts. We played Ronnie Scott's and a bunch of different clubs and places. So in a way, I guess, that's Ronnie's, right? So I would say, even though it was a college band, that was a gig.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I want to say, but my first professional gig where I got paid and everything That's the
Well,
Kennedy
so you
Center.
had a lot of experience by that point. So
Yeah.
obviously Fred knew you were ready to put you on the gig. And
Yeah.
then, playing.
and knew I could handle that and be mature enough to handle that,
Yeah.
as well.
Man.
And I really want to continue to sing his praises because he deserves it. Because he was brought out here when Harold Wheeler, I was just talking to a trumpet player yesterday. Harold Wheeler brought him out here when he was doing Dancing with the Stars.
Mm-hmm.
So that trumpet section, I know Fred and was Wayne or Rick.
Rick was
Rick. I think
Rick was
Dancing
the
with the Stars,
original.
right? That's
Yeah.
right. So it was Rick.
Yeah.
Right. So it
Rick
was
Baptist.
and who I love, who's so great.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's Rick Baptist, and he's so kind. And I'm sorry, I forget whoever the other.
Warren was on there. Was Warren Looning.
Maybe
yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah,
maybe
the few years, and then they had Chris Gray and
Okay.
Rob Shear, I think the later years.
Okay.
But
Okay.
man, that was a smoking band.
Yeah, and
God.
so
So Fred would come out. Fred did the Oscars too, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
with Rick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he would come out here.
So so I bring all that up to say that he's such a monster, and sitting next to this cat, I think of him to this day. I still doing my shows, doing gigs. I think of him all the time because there were certain things he really instilled in all of us in playing in just his college big band, and I watched it in real time, doing a gig with him for 5 weeks, 8 shows. This man nails. He didn't chip, crack, nothing, nails, period. And just to watch that level of excellence and sound and everything, and consistency, I was like, wow, okay, this is what it means.
Yeah.
This is to do this work, this is what this is. And so this is what I have to aspire to. And so to this day, playing shows and doing things, I think of him all the time. I'm like, be ready. You're not picking up your horn at the last minute, coming in for an entrance. Oh, no, man. Be prepared for this entrance. He used to tell us you have to mash your valves, have your valve set, be ready. And I think about all these things because I feel like as a commercial trumpet player, which I consider myself to be, that's what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a commercial / jazz lead trumpet player. Consistency is our game. Right? Orchestral trumpet players, it's really their game.
Yeah.
There's no room for error there, which I love. I'm a huge fan of the Met Opera. I go to see Billy and Krauss all the time to hear them, and it's just amazing, the sound of that orchestra. But consistency is our game.
Mm-hmm.
And when the red light is on, when you're on TV, I just did TV. I was just on the Sherry Shepherd show a few weeks ago, promoting my new show, The Heart of Rock and Roll, Huey Lewis, go see it. Promoting, and I'm like, okay, the light's on. It has to be there. What do we have to do for consistency? And I think about it. So I say all that to say, I learned so much of that from Fred, that consistency, being ready, all of that, so that when it comes time to play, we're all human, but we want to minimize our chances of missing.
Yeah.
I think I want to be Steph Curry, man.
Yeah.
I want, Michael Jordan.
As a Lakers fan, that hurts. But
look, I grew up.
But you have to respect greatness.
Look, I grew up out here. I was a Lakers fan. I grew up, Kobe and Shaq broke my heart. They had the greatest team ever. They broke my heart. But greatness, I feel there is consistency. There are rituals that you need to follow for consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And all great athletes and trumpet players, we're athletes, have rituals to set up our setup, why we breathe a certain way, setting all these rituals and routines so that we have the greatest chance at consistency. And I learned that from Fred, sitting there.
So, obviously he was an example for you, hearing him, and, he didn't just walk the walk,
Yeah.
or he didn't just talk the talk.
Talk.
He
He
walked the
walked
walk.
the walk.
But I mean, was there anything specific that you remember that he would tell you, or exercises that he would give you to prepare you for that?
I don't think there were a lot of specific exercises and things. It was merely watching him and learning that. I mean, I've studied with a few different people. I mean, after him, Terrence gave me the number to Bill Fielder. And Terrence was like, you need to study with Prof. Prof taught Wynton and I both. That's who you need. So I also studied with Prof with Bill Fielder. And Prof was, whereas Fred's thing, I really learned from Fred. He taught me literature and definitely playing by example, where, you know, in different books and methodologies. Whereas studying with Prof, with Fielder was very diligent about aspects of, you know, the trumpet. And like I said, he would say, what is the trumpet? The trumpet is the mirror of the mind. What you conceive it to be is what you will do. And so he, having studied with Herseth and Chickowitz and Jacob, he introduced me to, you know, Jacob's breathing method and all of that. And he would ask me, what is the glottis? When you take a breath, it's going to open the glottis so that you can, you know, air and introduce me to, you need to get a 5-liter lung bag. You know, all these breathing things.
All the Chicago school stuff.
All the Chicago. He was very much into that. And so, oh man, Prof trying to work on my articulation. I mean, I used to sit in a room just trying to attack just G. Just, you know, and come in and have clear articulation, and you'd say, you know, taking in the breath, you know, the diaphragm, if things expand, raising all this, you know, complete breakdown of you know, that whole Chicago method of breathing and trying to achieve that. So I think in that way, from him, I really got into the details of, you know, really dealing with the trumpet from that kind of mechanical way and trying to learn how do we, and I still to this day, I mean, as we all are trying to work and develop, I mean, my articulation is something I'm always trying to work on, always trying to get, how can I get cleaner? How can I get more of a ping on this sound or speed, or, I mean, as we all do, we're all neurotic about aspects of our playing, you know?
Yeah.
So he really helped me with that. I mean, I really want to say that there's a few amazing teachers that I really want to highlight if we're talking about that.
Yeah.
You know, Prof was one. From trumpet, I have to talk about Laurie Frank.
Oh yeah.
You know, coming to New York. So, you know, coming to New York after being at Howard, being in DC for the 4 or 5 years I was there, I was really fortunate that in my last semester. Now, I'm dating anyway.
Yeah.
Man, let me not
I
talk
think
about.
I was going to ask you which VK show you're on so we could get a firm year, but I won't do that. But you know, the sleuths out there, I'm sure will figure it out.
They'll figure it out.
You're only as old as you feel.
Yes,
so,
yes,
you know.
that and what Just for Men will allow me to be. So, you know, so coming to New York. So
this after you graduate from Howard,
right?
You
So
decide you want to go. You had New York in your sights.
Always, I always knew. And while I was luckily, my father, I love talking about my parents. My father, having my father work for Amtrak for 30, 40 years, I had a rail pass. So all the while I was in school in DC, I was constantly taking the train up to New York, taking lessons with people. I took a lesson with Cecil Bridgewater. You know, I used to come and see Prof all the time. And then Prof introduced me to Donald Byrd, and I started studying with Donald Byrd because Prof was like, look, man, I don't want to teach you jazz. I'm dealing with trumpet and this, but if you want to learn some jazz, I'll connect you with Donald. And I'll get to that because that's a great story.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. But let me back it up to say, so in my last semester at Howard, Illinois Jaquette came and did a concert and a workshop, and I was playing lead in the band there. And one of the things, let me just say, that was amazing about Howard is that as with many schools, we did a recording every year. We did an album every year. And man, it was from that was another experience that I really learned how to be in the studio when this light is on. You do not want to be the one guy to mess up the take. And I'm playing lead trumpet, so I don't want to mess up because I'm the one who's got to play these high notes all, through this session and really think about getting through this, 9-hour session of whatever 10 tunes we're going to record. So, Illinois comes to the school, does this session. At the end of the concert and everything, he says to me, well, look, I need a trumpet player in my band. Are you interested in coming to New York and playing some gigs? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. So he pulled me right out of school, and I started touring with the band, playing the band. Once again, I'm playing second trumpet. There was a situation where the lead player, after my first tour in the band, the lead player was let go, and we had a show the very next day. And he said, I need you to play lead tomorrow. I said, okay, no problem. We were outdoors at Lincoln Center. I'll never forget it. Midsummer Night Swing series they have there. And I played the lead book, and Kat started looking back like, damn, Ravi, okay. And he was like, yep. You're the lead player now. And so I was the lead player in that band for the next 3 years.
Wow.
And so that is what helped get me to New York. And also I had a friend who was at NYU, and he said, well, look, man, if you want to get your master's degree, I can help you get into NYU. I'm there doing a program that, you tutor some kids, they pay for your tuition, you get a stipend. I was like, that sounds great. Sure. So I came to New York, going to school, getting my master's, and working with Jaquette at the same time. Which at that time, that band used to work a lot. It was great. I mean, we toured Europe for like twice a year. We would be there in summer for all the festivals, North Sea and Nice and Montreux, and we would do all these festivals all over Europe. And then we would come back home after being in Europe for a month, and we would be in New York at Tavern on the Green, and they had the Chestnut Room there, and we would be there for the entire month of August, playing 6 nights a week, 2 sets a night, doing that, which was, man, talk about a lesson. I mean, and lead players learning about pacing, and because they would only supposed to be an hour set, but he would start really feeling it, and the second set, instead of it being an hour, is now 90 minutes, a 90-minute set, and I really learned a lot. And getting to, Lori, I will say, luckily by being at NYU, it allowed me to study with Lori, and Lori was just, those of us who have had the pleasure of spending time with her and having her just sit and listen to you play and say, well, Lori, I'm trying to do this, or I want, and say, okay. And she would listen and just in her rocking chair, kind of tap her foot as you're doing, and have her prescribe these things was just incredible, just so incredible. And I couldn't play a double C till I studied with Lori. I was playing lead in big bands, but you know what? That book, G's, I had to play, maybe some A's here and there. But she helped me work out, really great aperture control and some embouchure imbalances that she saw that I had, and helped me work all of that out. And she was just amazing. Really amazing.
Yeah, I miss Lori. I wish I could have studied with her. I got to meet her at one of these conferences at ITG, and by some reason, she ended up at a table with me after all of the concerts, and I was like, I'm sitting here with Lori Frank. I don't know how, and I got to talk to her till like 1 a.m.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely amazing. And fortunately, she passed before I was able to get her on, the podcast. Glad we have folks like you, sharing stories about her.
She was amazing.
I mean, there's not words. Legend, or she was an institution in
she
New
really
York.
Is. And I was just saying to someone yesterday, because I was talking about her, and it's no one. That is a loss to this day. I mean, there are many of us who studied with her, and people try to, of course, pass that on. I always tell people, please, you need Flexus. Everyone should have her book. Her and John McNeil. That book, because to this day, I mean, there's exercises that she wrote out for me that are in that book specifically, and I always tell people, go check this out, or go, well, the Flexus book addresses this thing or that. It has so much, and so much of her spirit I feel is in that, and so she was amazing. So I'm very grateful that she was definitely one of my great teachers. Definitely.
Well, thank you for sharing about Lori. And so you're playing with Illinois Jacquette, and you're touring with them. Is that like did some of the pop stuff start developing, or how did your career develop from there?
Being in New York, and people knowing that Ravi's out here. Ravi can play. There's the lead player. Can blow a little bit too. You start doing sessions with different people and different things, and I got called. Now I'm trying to remember. I got called to play with Queen Latifah. She was doing the American Music Awards. It was going to be the first time she was ever singing. And she did My Funny Valentine. And we flew out here to LA. We rehearsed in the studio for like a week. This 3.5-minute song just so she could do this. And that was kind of my intro into the pop thing. I think I know Barry Danielian was on that gig with me. Barry is out with Bruce Springsteen right now, and Clark Gayton, who's a great trombonist who used to play with Bruce and Sting. Clark, amazing, and we were in that. So I think that was kind of my intro into the pop thing. And Clark, I would call me because since he was always doing different sessions, like another R&B, like, oh yeah, I'm doing a recording session with Maya. You want to come do this? Can you come do this session? I'm like, yeah, sure, man. And another R&B record, and so I think, from doing these sessions, and as we know, in New York, everything is networking. Everything is, hey man, going out. I mean, when I first moved to town, yes, I had a gig, so people knew, but of course I still had to get to know people. So yes, I went to the Musicians Union. I did rehearsal bands at the union and started to develop my networking and relationships, and would go, guys invited me, hey man, are you interested in come subbing at my show? Come watch, sit in the pit, watch shows, start subbing on different shows, checking that stuff out. So I think, as I tell people, everything in business and networking is relationships, just trying to build relationships and trying to, because at a certain level, everybody can play. Yeah. Right? Everybody can play. And I'm by far, there are many trumpet players who are much better than I am in what they do, but I know we're all individuals, and I am who I am, and I have my voice, and I know what things I do well, and I know what things I don't do well, and I'll be honest about that. And so, of course, I try to put myself in the situations where I think this is where I will shine. This is my thing. Oh yeah, of course, this pop, R&B, rock and roll. Yeah, of course. Yeah, man, I'm cool with that. Are you interested in coming and subbing at Phantom? Not really. Or as much as, like I said, I love the Met Opera, and I admire Billy and Krauss, and I would love to play that kind of experience, but I know that's not who I am. So I try to put myself in these situations, and I'm called where they know who I am and what I do. And so on the pop side of things, I'll get those calls. I think from doing that stuff, if I'm jumping in years. although I've done, throughout the years, if I roll off, right? I feel like, are we name dropping through this?
I don't want to say everybody, but you've played with a lot of
New
folks,
York,
yeah.
Being in New York and knowing that, oh man, I'm really dating myself, man.
That's going to be the title of this episode.
Dating yourself.
Ravi Best, dating himself. And people are not going to know what to think.
Well, this will tell. One of the early gigs I did in town, I got a call. Did Earl call me or did Lou call me? Earl called me. I subbed for Earl.
We're talking about Earl Gardner, right?
The great. Yeah. When I say, I will always say the great Earl Gardner. Because Earl Gardner, as we know, is a lead player, created a sound and still has that sound and a style that you just don't get nowadays. You don't get.
Is there a count of how many Saturday Night Lives he's done or did?
So Earl was there. He and Steve Teray started in 1984.
Yeah.
So, and he just left this past season. So he was there for 39 years, 40. I'm not doing the math.
That's,
Well,
I started watching that show when I was,
84.
I'm not going to date myself, but I stayed up way too late than I should on a Saturday. God bless my parents.
Right.
To hear the band.
Right.
And I remember him, and after I got married and my first kid was born, and there's Earl still sitting there.
Always,
and still sounds the same.
Man, amazing. Yeah. Sound amazing. And I love Earl Gardner to death. I always tell Earl, I'm like, hey man, if you need the kidney, I'm pushing everybody out the way. You're taking mine. I'm giving you the kidney. Because, Earl, it's wonderful that, we all have our mentors and people who have looked out for us, and I know I'm getting to the place now where it's now my turn to do that. And I'm definitely going to be trying, and I am trying to do that in certain ways. But Earl, so when Earl called me to do Saturday Night Live, now I've known Earl for years. We played okay. I'll back it up, right? I my first thing in New York, I said I was subbing for him was with Whitney Houston.
Yeah, I got you off track.
It's okay. I'll come back to SNL. We'll come back to SNL.
Yeah. Was Whitney
Houston? Whitney, and which is was me, Lou Soloff, Lou, and I want to say, it was Ray Brown. Ray Brown.
Whoa.
Yes, because Ray was
fun.
He was the contractor on the gig, and so he was there. And I'll never forget it, man, because it's Whitney singing "I'll Always Love You," and at Radio City was sold out, and everybody's singing that. And I think it was one of the first gigs I did where there was like pyrotechnics and there's fireworks coming down behind us, and I'm like, "What's going on, man?" These fireworks, which was amazing, So I was saying all that to say that throughout my career, just having an opportunity, being in New York, they were saying, I got to play with Whitney Houston. I got to play with Stevie, at the Beacon. I got called from the great bass player, Jerry Barnes, and his sister, Catrice Barnes. Jerry now plays with Nile Rodgers. I got called. They were putting together a band for Stevie. Stevie was doing this thing in New York. Can you come? Yes, of course I can play. And Stevie Wonder sounded amazing. I'll never, oh man, to be that close to Stevie Wonder, like, oh my God, Stevie Wonder. And he sounded, I'm trying to play the gig, but he sounds so amazing. My knees are like buckling. And we were scheduled to do 2 tunes, Do I Do and I Wish. I think that's it. Part of this thing that Stevie was going to be doing. There's a bunch of other artists like Naughty by Nature and some R&B show thing. So we get out there, do I do, all that. We're doing that. But then all of a sudden, before we get in the tune, Stevie decides, boom, he's going into like I Wish. Boom, 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 boom. Looking back on when I. So we're like, oh shoot, okay. We're like picking the horn line. Okay, it's in this key. Okay, that's the horn line. Okay, we're figuring. And as soon as we would figure it out, boom, no, he shifts over here. Now he's going on to maybe like Ribbon in the Sky. I'm like, okay, there's no horns on Ribbon Sky, I'm good. He would go, and then no, boom, now he wants to play Sir Duke. Okay,
Oh, boy.
Sir Duke. Okay, what key? All right, we're trying to get the horn lines. Boom, he would do that, and then all of a sudden, bang, he would go to another tune. So 2 tunes ended up being like 12.
Greatest hits.
Yeah. And Stevie would just wanted to play. So we're just like trying to figure out, okay, in this key, all right, okay. And it felt like every time we would nail it, and now we're on everything, boom, he's shifting to the next tune, and I would be like, oh man, but it was amazing, playing with Stevie. And then I played with Aretha for about 12 years before she passed, And I got that call. I want to give him credit. I think Joe Mazzello got me on that. If people know that great Joe Mazzello, great lead trumpet player, played with Maynard in the 70s, along with another great friend of mine, Ron Tooley. These are all my mentors in New York.
Yeah.
Joe, Ron Tooley, Earl, all these guys. I still to this day, I just talked to Ron Tooley, and we were on tour before the pandemic with Stephen Van Zandt for 3 years. But Joe, I think, got me on the gig with Aretha, and whenever she would come to town, like she does, and many people I'm sure watching have played with her, because they put together horn sections.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people don't know. Like, they might have a core group, but then they'll pick up
the rhythm
musicians.
section.
Yeah,
but pick up the horns, and so it was great for me to. That's the great thing about being in New York, is that everybody's going to come through New York.
Yeah.
And a lot of times all these artists need horn sections. And so I would get a lot of these calls. So it was great to play with her over the years. It was amazing. No air conditioning when the Queen is in the house.
Ooh.
No air conditioning. Aretha. So, and Whitney was like this too. On that show. So vocalists don't like air conditioning. It dries out their vocal folds. They have a hard time singing. The Queen, I remember doing a concert one summer in Atlantic City. It was like 96, 97 outside. It was hot as you can be. We're in the dressing room. We're changing, getting ready to do the gig. Air conditioning has been on. All of a sudden the air conditioning goes off. And we're like, man, it's getting hot. What's happening? And I'm like, oh, she's in the building. The Queen is here.
Queen has arrived.
The Queen has arrived.
Everyone starts sweating.
The air's up.
Yeah.
Literally, we get on stage, tuxedos.
Ooh.
It's 96 outside. So now we're indoors, no air, lights, tuxedo. We're dying. She's a little late coming on stage. We're sitting there. She's about, 10 minutes go by. The audience is like, it's hot in here. It's hot. People are getting a little disgruntled. We're like, oh man, okay, we got to get started. She came out on the stage, and they heard, and she said, what you want? People were like, what? And forgot about all of that. And we sweated like you can't believe there are tuxedos. But it's like, okay, let's do this gig. This is what it is. Let's do this, So, being in New York has afforded me the opportunity to work with these people. I just did Buble, a thing with Buble at Radio City last week for NBC. They put together a band, and me and Jumani Smith, who's his lead player. Jumani was playing, we were doing that. And Kurt Batcher was playing, also. So, I get these calls.
Yeah. Being at the right place.
Being in the right place, and networking, having everything's relationships. And, I always try to be like, look, man, my first teacher, great guy, as I've said, taught me, like, look, man, everybody can play, or I don't care how great you are. I won't curse on this podcast. I'll just say, I'll minimize it and say, no one wants to work with an a-hole.
Yeah.
Don't be show up early, not on time. Show up early, play your best, and be a nice person.
Yeah.
And you'll work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It makes it seems so dumb, but it's really the simple things.
It is.
You know, once you can play the instrument, but that, like you said,
check your ego.
Yeah.
Check your ego and just be a nice guy.
Yeah.
You know. So let me get back to. I want to get back to Earl.
Yeah.
And SNL. Because I love Earl, and I could talk about. I never give.
We'll do a follow-up Earl episode. Maybe we can get Earl on.
Okay,
that would be fun.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You know, so unfortunately, Earl, I forget what I was doing at the time. If I'd been doing a show, or if I'd come off of being on the road or something. But Earl calls me, "Hey man, are you available? Can you do the show for me on Saturday?" I'm like, well, yeah, of course I can do the show. What, man, I slipped on some, I want to imitate Earl. I slipped on some ice. I slipped on some black ice and he tore his ACL.
Ooh.
So I was like, oh man,
serious.
Earl, of course I'll go in. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to do SNL, you know? And so went in, did the show. Now for people who don't know this about SNL, SNL is an all-day situation. You get there at 11 a.m. Well, yeah, I got there at 10.
You got there
an
at
hour,
10. Yep.
See? You start the rehearsal at 11 a.m. You play for a solid 2 hours. You play one chart. Sean Pelton, the drummer, is counting off the next chart, right into the next chart, right into the next chart. 2 hours, the music, rehearsing, running everything for the show that day. Then you have a little break. Then you have to come back and you have to play the introduction for the guest host to practice their monologue. So you have to play the theme, which at that time was screaming.
Oh yeah.
And on your face the entire time. So you had to play that a few times so they could walk through and do that. Then you would have a dinner break, and then you come back, and by 7 o'clock, I think it's 7 or 7:30, you play a warm-up set for a half an hour. The band plays, and you bring in the audience. Because for the dress rehearsal, they want to have a live audience. You do that. You do the dress rehearsal, which can be longer than the show because they want to try things out, maybe what's going to go on air, what's not. And so you might finish that by 10, sometimes 10:30 if Weekend Update goes long. And then by 11 o'clock, you take a little break. Then by 11, you're back on the stage. You're back on and doing the warm-up set again to bring in a fresh audience. And so that by the time 11:30 hits, you've already been playing for 4 to 5 hours. And now you're on live TV.
Now the red light's on.
Now the red light's on, and everybody's listening to live television.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So so in the 12, so up until last season, I was subbing there for about that's 12 years. I mean, I've done about 20 episodes, I think, of SNL. I did half of the pandemic season, that season for Earl. And luckily, I mean, whenever I went in, I did the first one and played it. And after that, Lenny said, if you can't be here, call Ravi. You know, Earl was like, what did you do? They didn't want me to come back. What do you, and I was like, come on, Earl, you're Earl. Come on. I'm not.
But what an honor though. Like, you know,
I mean, like I said, the kidney is always waiting for Earl Gardner. I will get, because Earl, look, I love Earl and I recognize it's New York City. He's Earl Gardner. He could have called anyone. He could have called anyone. But the fact that Earl entrusted me to hold down his chair and cover him on what is one of the most famous and television shows in history, and to be able to do that, I'm forever indebted to him.
Yeah. And you think about the TV bands, you know, the Tonight Show band with Doc, and then later with Robin Eubanks and Branford. But then the late David Letterman show and stuff. But I mean, that's been basically the same band for 40 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you guys are, it's an institution.
It's an institution. It really is. You know what I mean? So that was amazing.
I want to touch a little bit on, you mentioned you're doing like Buble and other people coming to town, but you've done Blood, Sweat, and Tears, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, over the past few years, the two other road gigs that I was doing was out with BS&T. I got a call. So coming out of the pandemic, I was doing a Broadway show before the pandemic shut down. And then we're all, who knows what's going to happen. Brad Mason called me. Brad's the MD, and as we know, an incredible trumpet player, and I love Brad. And he said, hey man, would you come out and do some gigs with BS&T? And I had done BS&T once, about, I don't like saying years, man. A few years ago.
Yeah.
Craig Johnson was playing in the band at that time. Craig was doing it, and Craig was leaving and said, hey man, you want to come out and do, some BS&T? And I said, sure, why not? It's BS&T. So I went out for a weekend with the band, and of course the music is great. But I had a show. I mean, it was like, it's road, like 4 a.m. airport, leaving at 4 a.m. It's the 6 a.m. as we know many bands do, their first flight out, go to city, do the gig, get to the hotel, be back out again, leaving the lobby calls 3 a.m. to get to the next 6 a.m. to go to the next town. And then I came back and did a matinee as soon as I got home, and which was on stage, the show Swing I was doing at the time. The band was on stage. I was like falling asleep on stage. The drummer's riser, like the Shield, like on stage. And I thought, man, I love this band. This is great, but I have a gig at home. I can stay at home and just do my gig, my show at the time. But when Brad called me, pandemic were coming out, I was like, yeah, man, I'd love to come out and play. Why not? Sure. And came out, and man, that band sounds amazing right now. I mean, as we know, everybody knows, everybody's been through that band. It's like a fraternity, as it's like the manager says, it's like the New York Yankees. You know what I mean? There's so many people that's come through, different players. But I will say that band right now sounds incredible. I mean, Brad is such a great trumpet player. I love Brad, and I have like a trumpet battle whenever we play. There's a little battle on Lucretia McEvil. We do. And when I'm there, I play spinning wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I play spinning wheel, which of course, I mean, Lou, we all miss Lou.
Ooh.
I mean, Lou, as we all know, Lou
Yeah.
Soloff, just the sweetest, kindest, amazing trumpet player. So, for me to think of him every night and to be able to play what is always like, hey Lou, I'm always thinking about you, so it's great. And the band sounds amazing. I mean, it really does. All the members of the band, the rhythm section is killing right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great band, and it's such great tunes. Brad has done a lot of new arrangements and things. So it's really, that band is just like, it's always been this great mixture of jazz and rock and all of that, which is great.
Yeah.
Is amazing.
And you mentioned earlier, doing Huey Lewis, right?
So, well, right now I'm doing a Broadway show that is just open, that's featuring all the music of Huey Lewis.
Okay.
So, which has been great. I grew up listening to, like I said, Southern California.
Power of Love.
Power of Love, man. That's how we finish this. We start and finish the show with Power of Love every night. And which is a lot of fun. There's the great horn stuff that's written. The Brian Yusufer, the arrangers, put some great stuff in there for me to really sink my teeth into. I'm like, I look the book, I'm like, great, F's, G's, nice, I'm gonna have fun. I can stick my teeth, I can get in. It's never gonna be boring, and it's fun. And Huey has been amazing. He's such a sweet guy, funny guy, comes down in the pit, guys, hang out with us, nicest guy. So it's great. It's great if look, to be on a Broadway show, to do Broadway, if you have to play something 8 times a week, you want it to be something you really enjoy and have fun with. I can't say that about all the shows that I've done. I've done some shows where I'm like, okay, let me just go in and do the gig.
It's work.
It's work.
It's work, yeah.
It is, and anything you do repetitively has the challenges, but at least when the source material is fun, then it's fun. Then it really is about, okay, the consistency factor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm playing this 8 shows a week. Let's not miss. Let's be on this. Okay, monotony may set in at a certain point, but no, I'm going to be consistent no matter what. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And, no matter what.
What fun. I have to come out and hear that. I gotta make a trip out to New York. I love Huey Lewis.
And it's a funny show. Yeah. The cast, they all sound great, and it's really funny. It's an 80s throwback thing.
Cool.
So it's really
I wasn't alive then. I was a 90s kid.
Yeah.
Right. I missed all of that. So Ben Strickland slipped me 100 before I walked in here. So I want to talk about equipment.
Oh, okay. Great.
So even though I work at a mouthpiece place, I always forget to ask. So talk about what you're using.
Okay.
The mouthpieces and the horns and all the fun stuff.
Okay. So, my career has changed a bit over the more and more. So over the past number of years, touring with the been touring with the Duke Ellington Orchestra and playing some with the Basie band a little bit. They've had me a few times. I was a Monette guy for 20 years. Wynton, when I remember Wynton went from playing Selmer, Wynton was playing, he had a Bach, which at that time I was like, man, I have to get a new horn. I was playing on a old Yamaha, I think, and Wynton, as many people know, is so kind and gracious. And he was like, well, you want this horn? I'm getting some new horns. And so he gave me a Bach 72 Vindobona gold brass bell, which I believe is on the cover of the Hot House Flowers record. I have that horn, and I played on it for a long time. Yeah. And I will cherish that always. It's one of my, it's gifts. But he left Bach and he was playing on Selmer's for a little bit, if people remember that. And then he got on a Monette. And I remember when he got it and he was like, hey man, check this out. And I was like, whoa, this feels great. Wow. And so with the money, I talked about my first show with Fred Irby at the Kennedy Center. I took the earnings from that show and bought my first Monette trumpet, which at that time was only $1,950.
Now that's dating yourself.
Yes. Damn it.
After all these questions, now you're finally,
Oh, man. And so, obviously Wynton being my idol and hero and I wanted to play like him and sound like him and all that, and got on the Monette and played that for many years. Went from an Art Farmer model to playing on a big Ajna and playing lead on that horn. I've recorded.
That's why you're in shape. Yeah, man.
I know, man.
Playing lead on that horn for a few years.
I recorded. Yeah. I recorded a few records playing lead on that. I recorded a big band playing lead with Sam Rivers, a record with Sam Rivers, Culmination. There's a few records I playing lead on that horn. Then I was with David Murray, his big band and octet, and I played on that with him. And then also I was in Lester Bowie with a Brass Fantasy. We recorded a record with him, which we were talking about last night. Lester was such an amazing trumpet player and human being. And so I was doing all this, stuff playing jazz / lead on that horn, and what, although very different, one would never think of that to be a lead trumpet for playing lead because it's a much darker sound, but it had a thickness that I always liked at the time, so then when I had to hit a note, it was like slapping somebody across their face with this big, heavy sound for a number of years. But unfortunately, when I started working with less acoustic and more electronics, guitars, doing more and more pop work, doing now rock and roll work, being on tour with Steven Van Zandt for 3 years, I was like, man, I really need something that cuts a little bit more. I love Dave, and I love this sound. And as much as to this day, man, Terrence, I love Terrence Blanchard's sound, man. Terrence just, Wynton can play anything and everything. Of course, he sounds great. He's Wynton Marsalis. But I just feel like, man, Terrence has created like a sound concept and thing through his Monette and Ron Miles, same, before his passing, Ron, they created a sound and a thing by utilizing Dave's sound concept in a way that I think is just incredible. And I love Terrence, man. It's so amazing. And I always wanted to be some of that.
Yeah.
I always wanted a part of that. But I had to accept at a certain point, I had to read the room and look at, what have you been doing, man? What are you doing? And so once I started really playing consistently a lot with all these guitars and electronics, and I was just like, man, I need something that's really going to speak through this, so as much. And I had a nice long talk one day with Rashawn Ross, and we were talking about this because with him being with Dave Matthews, he made a similar move. And so I ended up trying a bunch of horns and having, as we all have heard, Wayne playing the Incredibles, man. I mean, just every trumpet player in the world has sat in a movie theater with our mouths on the floor. Because, first of all, in the past 20, 30 years, I don't think we've had a film with a just unbelievable screaming lead trumpet player like that. Probably if you go back and listen to Faddis on like Magnum Force and those Clint Eastwood, John is on all those things.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't think we've just had just prominent trumpet. I mean, there's always trumpet.
Yeah, but it's in a classical idiom
exactly.
Or that's what I'm saying.
But that film being a throwback to the 70s, or, I think musically what they were trying to do was a throwback. And so Wayne is just singing both of those films, just like, I was like, that's the sound. That's what I have to get for all this rock and pop stuff that I'm doing. This is what I need. So I was like, let me go try a Yamaha. Let me play Wayne's model. And it's funny, and initially I was like, it feels great, but I don't know if it's the sound I want. But I went up to Yamaha and, up to their atelier in New York. And Tom Kamisic was a great guy there running that. And Wayne Tanabe, and I was like, let me try Wayne's horn again. I think I want to do that. And they were like, okay, we'll set that out for you. But they said, but we've just redone Bobby's horn. We have the new version 2 of the shoe. You should check that out. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I started A-Bing those horns. And I was like, they were like, yeah, man, the shoe, you sound really good. So I was like, yeah, I really like this. So I got a lacquer horn. I know people always say, Bobby always says lacquer. Lacquer is the horn and this and that. But I love them both. And I went with the lacquer horn initially because it was brighter, had more zing, definitely had what I needed. But I played the silver too, and I remember it had a stability to it, a little more weight on the bell, density and sound that I loved. And I was able in that room, I mean, I don't know, this sounds douchey, man. But I remember playing those horns, and I was able to play a G above double C and kind of sit on it in a way that I was like, I've never felt this, lock this note in on a horn like this. And I never forgot that. And so I went back. I mean, I got the lacquer horn, and then 2 weeks later, I was like, no, I need the silver one too.
You get the silver one.
I got the silver one too.
So you've been using those.
So those are what I use.
Those are your workhorses.
Those are my workhorses, and they've been great. I mean, for what I do, the sound, for shows, rock and roll stuff, pop stuff, it's really great. So great.
Awesome.
And so now from the front side of that, I've been working with Greg Black.
Yeah.
Some
of my favorite people in the world.
Oh man, they're amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing for me to be working with these guys, which, I mean, you know how this is, who are saying, how can we help you? How can you, what are you playing on? What are you trying to get? What do you need? And for me to be able to tell them, okay, I'm playing on this, but I'm losing some of this aspect that I really want, or I love the sound of this, but this rim is not really comfortable. I feel like it's beating me up a little bit. And for us to work through piece by piece all of the elements of a mouthpiece, for me to get everything that I need in terms of sound, feel, consistency, you know, everything. I'm just like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
You know, it's great.
Well, and then Greg came out of the Giardinelli shop, so he's, you know, intimate with the New York sound and the needs of the New York players from the guys that were coming in and out of there. You know, just like Bob in Hollywood, you know. So, yeah, having that background, plus the machining skills and being darn nice.
Totally.
Those great black guys.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It irks me. Come on, we're machinists. We're supposed to be angry at each other. Come on.
Well, you know, I love that. One of the nice things that I've noticed, because I haven't been to an ITG in years, honestly. I just haven't. I mean, I think with work and I'm not, as much as I'm a trumpet player, I've never been like a gearhead, right? Like I want to try all the new things all the time. This, that. I'm just like, man, I just need to practice. Get something that works, something that feels good, something sounds good, and just shed. Because at the end of the day, it's about you. We can always try to find this elixir of miracles. And I'm just like, no, man, it's got to be me. I've got to, you know. But it's been wonderful. I say that it's been great to be here and see everybody from these different companies and different things. And everyone, nobody's vibing. Everybody's cool. Everyone's very supportive. Everyone appreciates what the other does and is supportive in their own way. And man, I wish trumpet players in general, I hope will be like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I haven't honestly experienced a lot of ugly competition because I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
I believe in what's meant for me is meant for me, and that'll, whatever calls come to me, okay, I'm grateful and appreciative, and that will come to me. And what's meant for you, God bless. That's for you, and you'll do that. Yeah. So I don't believe in this kind of, toxic. We always toxic.
There's enough of that everywhere else. You know, man, we're musicians. We're just having fun.
Well, and that's the bottom line too. Like you said, we're musicians. We're making music. We're not. Let's not take it too seriously. I mean, yes, we bring joy and we uplift people's lives with our music. And you never know what, I do think from time to time, you never know. Someone in the house I'm playing, this could be the last performance they ever see. This could be it. So let me really try to give something so that someone walks away, whatever my little piece is, whether I'm only in a Broadway pit and they just hear some high note on the end, a button on the end of a tune, bop, and maybe, wow, that was cool. What was that? You know what I mean? Whatever, or I'm being featured as a soloist in front of a band, blowing, whatever it may be. Man, just, you never know what people are going through in their lives. And yes, music is very important in that way. We can uplift people's lives. But at the same time, we're not curing cancer. We're not neurosurgeons saving. So let's, it's important, but it's music.
Yeah.
As one of my best friends, she always says, nobody dies. Nobody dies. Don't take it too serious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so it's great. It's really great for me to be here and to really witness that. And I'm like, oh, this is really wonderful.
Yeah. That's really a great thing about these things,
Yeah.
The camaraderie and the sharing of ideas. Why we're doing this now, right?
Exactly.
I mean, man, we've gone. Thank you for
your
your time.
See, I told you, I could talk,
this is
man.
absolutely amazing. We could talk. We haven't even gotten to coffee.
Right.
We'll do that next time.
Oh,
Can you do a 30-second? What's your road setup of coffee?
So, coffee, I believe, is a cherished and spiritual experience. One needs to set up their day. On the road, when I'm out on the road, I carry always a few things in my bag. I have an AeroPress that I travel with a gold metal filter, so I don't have to worry about, am I going to lose paper filters? Are they going to be damaged? I have a metal filter that I use. I carry with that. Inside that goes a Hario hand grinder.
We're getting geeky. I love it.
Yes, the hand grinder that I grind my beans. And I'll what I love to do is in different cities, I'll seek out roasters and coffee places, and I'll try different beans so that I get up in the morning. And I also have a travel kettle that I also travel with. That's like a silicone thing. It folds down, so no matter what, I have my AeroPress, I've got beans, I've got my grinder, and I have a kettle. I can always make coffee wherever I am so that I'm making sure I'm starting off my day properly.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm sorry for the hotel coffee that I had here. Next time, I'm serving a proper cup when we do the follow-up interview.
It's all good.
Ravi, how can what's the best way for folks to find out about you? Instagram or you on social media?
Yeah. I believe in social media. Yeah, definitely. That's our new world. Look, social media is the current CV. That is in real time. So Ravi Best Music on IG, and I think I'm just on Meta. Meta, just Ravi Best, Ravi H Best, or Ravi Best. You can find me there. And I'm always advertising, of course, as we do. We have to self-promote. It's part of our business. Self-promotion. Let people know what you're doing. If you don't let people know what you're doing, no matter how great it is, how will they know? Yeah. How will they know? So I definitely believe in that. So those are the two places where you can catch me wherever I'm going to be, and I promote that, and
catch you in New York or on the road sometime.
Definitely.
Or on Saturday Night Live if Earl will let you.
If that happens again.
Ravi, absolute honor to have you on here. Now, I can't let you go. I have one more question for you. And I mean, you've left us with so much great advice.
Yeah, sure.
But if you can leave us with one more piece of advice that you would consider your best piece, what would that be?
Wow. My best piece of advice. I think I've said this already. But I think remember that everything is relationships. Everything is relationships, and being a nice guy, man. That's everything. Because no matter how great you are, good or bad, we're all human. We all have good days and bad, right? But if you can always try to be kind and develop good relationships, people will always respond to that. You'll always work. I think that's really vital. You'll always work. There's a certain skill set. There's a certain level, right? We all want to be and then be better than, but at a certain place, everybody's kind of around here. There's the greats, but we all want to work. And just look, man, being on the road, you have to live with people. I have to live with cats, right? I mean, being on the road, there's times I've been with these musicians more than I've been with my wife. You know what I mean? So so I always want to make that as pleasant as possible. We all have to live together. We all work together. We're making music together. We want that to have a certain energy and a certain vibe. So always, relationships and kindness, and you'll always work.
Yeah. Man. Goes a long way. Thank you, Ravi.
Totally.
Absolute honor to have you on today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Let's go have some coffee.
Definitely some nice coffee. Awesome.
A huge thank you to Ravi Best for spending part of his day to share his life experience and stories. You can tell why he's so successful. Obviously, his versatility, his mindset, his hard work and determination, all of those things come through in his interview, and very inspiring person to sit with and talk with. And he's darn nice, too. And I want to mention, I interviewed Ravi at the International Trumpet Guild Conference recently out here in Anaheim. He took a red eye out from New York City, and he came out to hang out at the Greg Black booth. He's a Greg Black mouthpiece artist, and he was only out for one day. In fact, he had to get back to the airport that night to take a red eye back to New York to get back on a show. So the fact that he was willing to spend a few hours of his day, his precious time out in LA to talk with me and to share his stories meant a whole lot. So thank you, Ravi. We'll have links to where you can find Ravi on social media and his website in the description of this podcast. And so make sure to follow him and check out what he's up to. And if you're in New York, go check out one of his Broadway shows that he's playing on. All right, that's it for this episode. Thank you, as always, for listening. It means a lot to me. I've gotten lots of requests for podcast guests in the future, and I'll try to get them in there. Our list is really long, and I know some of you have written in and requested someone, and I haven't gotten them on yet. That doesn't mean I'm not going to. That just means I have to work through the list and whoever's available and who I can reach out to. That being said, I have some amazing guests coming up. We have Imani Duhe, who's a fabulous young player here in Los Angeles. Alan Vizzuti is coming up in a future episode, as well as from Lip Slur headquarters, the infamous Scott Belk. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button on YouTube, and that way you won't miss any episodes. That's it for this episode, so until next time, let's go out and make some music.